If you've been diagnosed with osteoporosis or you're worried about your bone health, I get it. I used to be frail and I was terrified of falling. I thought weak bones were just a part of aging until my research team and I found proven ways you can reverse osteoporosis starting today. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the science of bone health, the truth about Dexa scans, and what you need to do for healthy bones, the top myths about osteoporosis, and how to make informed decisions about bone health with your doctor. By the end, you'll know exactly what to do step by step to prevent and reverse osteoporosis, so you can live an independent, active life with the people you love. I'll be covering shocking information that's not being shared anywhere else. So the first thing you need to know about osteoporosis is the science of your bones and how they actually work. Your bones are constantly changing. I used to think bones were fixed and stable, but it turns out they're constantly being broken down and rebuilt, kind of like our skin. There's two key players you need to know about: osteoclasts and osteoblasts. Osteoclasts are cells that break down bone. Think about jackhammering up cement. Osteoblasts are the cells that build bone. Think bricklayers. Both cells are really important for bone health, and they work together. You need osteoclasts to get rid of old bone that's not healthy anymore, just like dead skin cells. And of course, you need osteoblasts to build back strong bones. So our bones are always changing, and this is great news. It means you can change your bone health starting right now. So the secret to bone health is simple. You just need your osteoclast and your osteoblast balanced and healthy. I'm going to explain how soon, but first you need to know the truth about Dexa scans. Your doctor probably told you to get a Dexa scan, and if you haven't already, it's a low-dose x-ray that measures your bone mineral density. That's a measurement of the calcium and other minerals in your bone. The official diagnosis of osteoporosis is when your T-score is at or below negative 2.5 on your Dexa scan results. Your T-score is basically how much bone mineral density you've lost since the age of 30. So the idea is, if you have high bone mineral density, then you have stronger bones and are less likely to get fractures. The key word here is fractures, because the truth about osteoporosis is having osteoporosis doesn't really matter, except that it increases your risk of fractures. So fractures are the real issue here. Bone mineral density is just an estimate of fracture risk. The big problem no one is talking about is that bone mineral density is not an accurate predictor of fracture risk. For example, there are countries with lower bone mineral density than the US, but they also have less fractures. Also, being overweight increases your bone mineral density because there's more demand on your bones. Being 50 pounds overweight is like carrying a 50-pound weighted vest. Your bones will respond by becoming more dense to accommodate the weight load. But countries with high rates of obesity also have more fractures. This is another example of how high bone density does not protect you against fractures. And get this, in a study of 9,000 women 65 and older, only 15% of low trauma fractures were due to osteoporosis. Low trauma just means falling from no more than a standing height. So you didn't just fall out a window from a tall building. The vast majority of fractures, 85%, have nothing to do with bone mineral density. Another study showed less than 1 in 3 hip fractures can be attributed to Dexa-diagnosed osteoporosis. So if you're worried about falling and breaking your hip, like I used to be, then you should stop worrying about your Dexa scan. So if osteoporosis is not the main cause of fractures, what is? This might seem obvious, but the main cause of fractures is falling. Let me say again, fractures are not caused by osteoporosis. The main cause of fractures is falling. The name of the game is fall prevention. And the main cause of falling is a loss of balance, stability, and strength as we age. This is also why women have more fractures than men, because women fall more often. And it's not because we have lower bone mineral density. It makes sense when you think about it. There's a lot that goes into falling. The furniture in your house, your coordination, your eyesight, whether you've been drinking, the weather, etc. Bone mineral density is just one small piece of the puzzle, and that's been over-commercialized and pushed on women for decades. But wait, didn't I just say I would tell you about how to reverse osteoporosis? Don't worry, we're still going to get to that. Because what's good for fall prevention is also good for your bone density. So as long as you're focusing on fall prevention, you're going to reverse your osteoporosis too. And this is 100% in your control. Whether you fall or not is a result of your lifestyle and not your genetics. Falling is not your destiny. So, if there's all this research against the use of Dexa scans, then why are Dexa scans still recommended by organizations like the World Health Organization to measure your bone mineral density? Well, I didn't know that the World Health Organization's osteoporosis screening guidelines were funded by 3 drug companies. You can see why Dexa scans are so popular, since older women naturally have lower bone mineral density due to hormonal changes. Companies that sell drugs like Fosamax use Dexa scans to turn unhealthy women into paying customers. So here's the bottom line. It doesn't matter what your Dexa scan says. Maybe you have osteoporosis or osteopenia, or don't even know. The point is, everyone should do the same thing to build and maintain healthy bones and prevent falls. You need to focus on 3 things: resistance training, vitamin D, and nutrition. Starting with resistance training. Of all the things you can do to prevent falls and build strong bones, resistance training is by far the most important. Our bones respond to the load we put on them. For example, a study on college athletes across a range of sports found their dominant arm always had the higher bone density score than the other arm. Overwhelmingly, a sedentary lifestyle is the main cause of osteoporosis. Our bones are just like our muscles. If you don't use it, you lose it. You know how astronauts lose their bone density while they're floating around in space? Well, the same thing happens to us when we sit all day long and never put any load on our bones. But the thing most women don't know is you need to do osteogenic exercises to build strong bones. Osteogenic literally means bone producing. Our bones respond to resistance in the same way trees grow strong roots in the wind. The more wind, the stronger the roots. Resistance basically means weight, but can also mean things like resistance bands. What shocked me is that swimming, running, cycling, Pilates, and yoga are not osteogenic. Yeah, one of my clients was actually taking a low-impact workout class for healthy bones. I've done this too. In one study, competitive female cyclists lost bone density over a 12-month period. So even if you're super fit and work out all the time, you can still have weak bones if you're not doing resistance training. Like even if you're training for a triathlon, because swimming, biking, and running are not osteogenic. So the best exercise to build strong bones and prevent falls is lifting weights. There's a ton of variety with this. You could just do bands or just do body weight, especially when you're starting out. Another great way to build strong bones is walking with a weighted vest, and it doesn't need to be very heavy. Start with 6 pounds. So do your regular walk with a weighted vest. It's like working out without working out. And for balance and fall prevention, the current evidence supports doing some balance training like yoga and Tai Chi. So yeah, my hack is to do balance training that also counts as resistance training, like walking lunges with dumbbells and step ups. And there are a lot of exercises like this you can do with dumbbells. Go ahead, hit your Pilates or your yoga class, but not until you've done your resistance training first. That's an order. Another reason resistance training is great for fall prevention is because it builds up your muscles. Age-related muscle loss, called sarcopenia, is a huge contributor to fracture risk, much more than osteoporosis. Think about it. When you trip over something and stumble and catch yourself, you need to be strong to do that. If you have weak muscles, you might not catch yourself, and a little trip can mean a big trip to the hospital. Lifting weights is by far the most effective way to preserve your muscle with age. I've gained over 8 pounds of muscle as a woman over 50, and many studies of women in their 70s and 80s have proven it's never too late to get strong. I used to think that lifting weights would make me hulky, but that's not true. By lifting weights, you can end up getting the toned physique you always wanted, and it's so incredibly important for your longevity. I also do exercises for my lower back that help me with my balance too. I take the stairs whenever I can, so I can preserve my ability to go up and down the stairs. Yeah, I've fallen down the stairs before, more than once, and I never want to do that again. One year-long trial had especially good results. 145 women in their 70s who did a combination of resistance training and step aerobics had 74% less fractures over the next 5 years compared to the control group. They worked out 3 times a week for only 30 minutes and still got this amazing benefit. At this point, you might be wondering, how do I get started with resistance training? aging? Well, you're in luck because I made a complete longevity workout guide for women over 50 who want to build strong bones, prevent falls, and get in fantastic shape. You can download it for free by clicking on the link in the description box below or going to jillritchie.com/fit. It's going to walk you through everything from beginner to advanced to get you stronger for longer. Again, you can access it for free by going to jillritchie.com/fit or clicking in the box below. By the way, you should check with your doctor before lifting weights if you have severe osteoporosis. Now, let's move on to our next step for building healthy bones, which is vitamin D. Vitamin D is really important for bone health because it helps your gut absorb the calcium in your food. You might remember from my supplements I don't take video that taking calcium supplements is a hard no. You must get it from food. Severe vitamin D deficiency actually causes osteomalacia, which is softening of the bones. Muscle weakness is also a symptom of vitamin D deficiency, which can contribute falling. Thankfully, vitamin D supplements have been shown to improve muscle strength and balance. Mega doses, though, are actually harmful and increase fall risk by about 30%. So it's best to take a vitamin D supplement every day rather than once a year. The ideal blood level of vitamin D for bone health and longevity is above 20 nanograms per milliliter. I walk in the sun every day and I still was deficient in vitamin D until I started taking a supplement. The one I take has been vetted by my research team for purity and potency. I take 2,000 units of this brand every day. That's what I recommend in general, but if you're deficient, you might want to take 5,000 units for a few months to get back to normal levels. Test your blood to find out. I put a link on the one I take below. So far, we've covered exercise and vitamin D, and now it's time for nutrition. The first thing you probably think about bone health and nutrition is calcium. Calcium is super important, but there are other nutrients you need to be consuming to build strong bones. You need nutrients like vitamin C, folate, vitamin B6, copper, magnesium, zinc, potassium, protein, and vitamin K. It sounds like a lot, but if you're eating a diet including whole grains, fruits, vegetables, and beans, it's a cakewalk. The one food group you should especially focus on for bone health is green vegetables because they're rich in both calcium and vitamin K1, which your body turns into vitamin K2. Vitamin K2 steers calcium into your bones while taking calcium out of places it's not supposed to be, like your arteries. Think calcified plaque. You should aim for at least 90 micrograms of vitamin K every day, which you can easily get from greens, except spinach and Swiss chard. Those are both high in oxalates, which makes their calcium hard to absorb. Parsley, kale, broccoli, Brussels sprouts are especially good sources of both calcium and vitamin K. Pick one you like. Vitamin C is great for your bones too. It can lower your risk of hip fractures by 5% for every 50 milligrams of vitamin C you eat a day. That's the same as one orange. But as long as you're eating fruits and vegetables, you'll get more than enough. Before I talk about what to avoid for bone health, I just want to mention the importance of making your home fall-proof so you don't trip over anything. I think you know what to do, but I put a couple of links in the description below so you can check it out. It's a checklist to make your home fall-proof. Boring, but it could save your life. Now that you know how to build healthy bones and prevent falls, you also need to know what to avoid, starting with statins. If you're on statins, you should know that these drugs block your body's ability to make vitamin K. If you're looking for alternatives to statins, you can check out my video about heart disease. I'll put a link to it below as well. Next, there's saturated fat. A study of over 2,000 women aged 18 to 79 found a strong link between saturated fat intake and muscle loss. When I say strong link, it's like there's a strong link between smoking and lung cancer. It's serious. Compared to eating 8% of their calories from saturated fat, women who ate 16% had 10 years of muscle loss. Saturated fat makes you lose so much muscle, it's like you're aging yourself an extra 10 years. This is why saturated fat consumption is also strongly linked to getting hip fractures. Next, there's sugary soda and salt, which both increase calcium loss through urine, which can affect your bone health. But the worst beverage for your bones and falling is alcohol. Yeah, Jill Cabernet was very sad to hear this. A meta-analysis showed alcohol contributes to increased hip fracture. It's a double whammy because alcohol is bad for your bones, but it also makes you tippy-canoe. Another medication you might be taking is acid blockers for acid reflux or GERD. They're also called proton pump inhibitors or PPIs with brand names like Prilosec and Prevacid. Acid blockers are really bad for your bones because they reduce your stomach acid, which blocks calcium absorption. Based on studies covering 2 million people, these medications increase hip fracture rates at any dose. Acid blockers have other serious side effects, and my team is working on a video about that. In a nutshell, if you want to get off acid blockers, you need to lose weight, stop smoking, eat more fiber, avoid fatty meals, and try not to eat within 2 hours of lying down. Too much thyroid hormone can also cause bone loss. If you're taking thyroid medication, you should talk to your doctor to see if you can take a lower dose. Corticosteroids like prednisone can also hurt your bones at high doses. Okay, so now you know exactly what to do and what not to do for healthy bones. But here's a few myths about osteoporosis that you need to know about so you can make informed decisions about your bone health. First, there's a myth that osteoporosis drugs will prevent fractures. Well, osteoporosis drugs like Fosamax, Actonel, Boniva, and Reclast actually cause the thing they're supposed to prevent: more fractures. To be accurate, these drugs can reduce your risk of fracture by a tiny 1.4%, but that's only for spinal fractures. Osteoporosis drugs have not been found to prevent first-time hip fractures. If you already had a hip fracture, the risk reduction for the next one is just over 1%, meaning if you're treated 91 people for 3 years, osteoporosis drugs would only prevent 1 hip fracture. So osteoporosis drugs are not effective at preventing fractures, whether it's your first one or a repeat one, and those drugs have serious side effects. But why are these drugs so ineffective? The way they work is by blocking your osteoclasts. You'll remember that osteoclasts are the cells that clear out old bone so it can be replaced by fresh bone that's laid down by your osteoblasts. Healthy bones are constantly being remodeled, and that's a good thing. So when you take Fosamax, your osteoclasts stop breaking down old bone, but your osteoblasts keep laying down new bone. The net effect is an increase in bone mineral density and a better score on your Dexa scan, at which point your doctor will give you a pat on the back and send you on your way. The problem with these drugs is they don't actually make your bones stronger. It's exactly like painting over a rotten wood beam. Yeah, it's nice to have a fresh coat of paint on it and it looks good from the outside, but underneath it's a total mess, and if there's an earthquake, it's going to snap in too. So drugs like Fosamax actually make the problem worse, and you end up with even weaker bones. But no one is talking about this because they make you look great on a Dexa scan. Another thing that makes your bones look good on a Dexa scan is fluoride. Even though fluoride is a neurotoxin, I recommend you get water filter in your home that removes the fluoride. Fluoride does the same thing as Fosamax. It makes your bones weaker. If you already had a serious fracture like a hip fracture, your doctor will encourage you to take osteoporosis drugs. But I strongly recommend you do everything else first and then see if you really need them after. Yeah, some extreme cases might deem these drugs necessary as a temporary solution. If you come across a randomized controlled trial concluding that osteoporosis drugs are beneficial, you should note that these trials are generally of low quality, lackluster follow-up, and poor selection criteria. Another osteoporosis myth is that you need to take calcium supplements. That's right, you heard me, calcium. I associate the word calcium with strong bones, don't you?
Hi, kids!
Now that we're in our 50s, my friends and I are worried about osteoporosis and weak bones. When I committed to taking my health seriously, one of my top worries was becoming frail. I heard too many horror stories about a hip fracture being someone's one-way ticket to hospice. It's true. About 20% of women who have a hip fracture don't survive another year. Can you imagine how surprised I was to find out that calcium supplements are associated with an increased risk of hip fracture, and not just a little, by 64% compared to placebo. This comes from a meta-analysis of over 100,000 women. Why did I think calcium supplements were good for my bones? In 1992, there was a study done on institutionalized women who were deficient in vitamin D because they didn't get enough sun. The research gave these women a combination supplement of vitamin D and calcium and found it reduced the hip fracture rates by 43%. When you know how the study was designed, it's obvious that curing the women's vitamin D deficiency had a huge impact on bone health. But the study was taken out of context and formed the basis of the calcium is good for bones mantra. The U.S. Preventative Services Task Force, the group that sets screening guidelines for things like mammograms and colonoscopies, had this to say about calcium for osteoporosis. It's simple. Do not supplement. Researchers found that calcium supplements make your blood more coagulable, which just means more likely to clot, and blood clots are what trigger a heart attack or stroke. The Women's Health Initiative, which is the largest and longest randomized controlled trial on calcium supplementation, showed that calcium supplementation, even at low doses, increases your risk of heart disease and stroke. This has been confirmed by many other studies. Interestingly, dietary calcium doesn't carry the same risk as calcium supplements. That might be because taking calcium supplements creates an unnatural spike in blood calcium levels. You should never take calcium pills, not even Algical. They just don't go in your bones. The calcium floods your system and starts depositing calcium in tissues throughout your body. This calcifies tissue like artery walls and tendons, which contributes to heart disease. Okay, so if you're not taking calcium supplements, where are you going to get your calcium? Well, this brings us to the next myth about osteoporosis, which is that you need milk, cheese, and other dairy products to get enough calcium for strong bones. Good marketing, right? Because cows make calcium, right? Well, not really. Calcium is a natural occurring mineral found in our soil. Grass absorbs calcium from its roots, and cows eat the grass, which is full of calcium. The reason why cow's milk has so much calcium is because cows eat grass. The most efficient way to get calcium is by eating dark green leafy vegetables. But is milk really that bad? Consider the Harvard Nurses Health Study. It followed over 75,000 women for 12 years and found zero benefits of drinking milk for fracture risk. Another cohort study of over 60,000 women concluded that higher milk rates was associated with more fractures and a greater risk of death. And we're here for longevity. Another study from Harvard followed 200,000 people for 3 decades and published the results in 2019, showing every additional half glass of milk we drink a day increases your risk of death by 11%. So, the most direct way to get calcium is to get it from plants. And once you look at the body of evidence, you'll realize it's a safer choice too. And in general, our need for calcium is blown way out of proportion. Consider the Bantu population in South Africa. The average woman there has 9 children and nurses each one for 2 years. They only eat 300 milligrams of calcium a day, which is the same as 2 cups of bok choy. The Bantu women don't eat any dairy or take any calcium supplements, but they have 0 problems with osteoporosis. So how much calcium do you need? Based on all the evidence, about 500 to 700 milligrams is the sweet spot for adults. Our bodies are great at holding on to calcium, so we really don't need to worry about it too much. Surprisingly, the calcium in dairy products is not well absorbed by our bodies. Take a look at this chart. You'll see that the calcium from greens is absorbed a lot more than from dairy. For example, the calcium in Brussels sprouts is absorbed twice as much as milk. So focus on eating calcium-rich foods every day, like parsley, kale, broccoli, and Brussels sprouts, and your bones will be super healthy. Here's another myth about osteoporosis, the whole acid-alkaline thing. You might have heard that when you eat acidic foods, your body leaches calcium out of your bones in order to buffer the acid. Well, in 2005, new research came out and busted this myth. So acidic foods do not have an impact on your bones. Your acid-alkaline balance still really matters for your muscles. You'll remember that muscle loss is a huge contributor to falls and fractures. Well, when you eat acidic foods, your body does need to buffer the acid so it can maintain a healthy acid-based balance. But now we know it's not buffering the acid with your bones. But guess what it's using instead? Glutathione. And where does your body get glutathione from? From your muscles. So acidic diets contribute to muscle loss over time, which increase your risk of falls and fractures, especially hip fractures. Here's a chart showing you which foods are acidic and which foods are alkaline. To prevent falls and fractures, it's really, really important that you eat more alkaline foods, especially fruits and vegetables, to preserve your muscle mass. So now I want to talk about how you can make informed decisions with your doctor about your bone health. First, I recommend you assess your own fracture risk with the Frax online tool. I'll put a link to it below. But if you're at high risk for fractures and you and your doctor can consider a conservative and temporary dose of supplements or medications, especially if you already had a fracture and you're trying to prevent a second one, I highly recommend you make your lifestyle the main focus for your bone health and for your longevity. Even though I don't generally recommend Dexa scans to predict future risks, it would be helpful to do a before and after Dexa scan so you can prove to your doctor that you don't need to take drugs. If you do everything I recommend, your bone mineral density should either increase or stay the same. Both are a good sign. If you do end up taking medication, I strongly recommend against biphosphonate drugs like Fosamax. If you're considering HRT to reduce fracture risk, I made a quick video about that. I'll link it below for you to check out. It's also a great idea to get some medical clearance for resistance training. Maybe your doctor can refer to you a physical therapist, because if you have really severe osteoporosis, you could get hurt by lifting heavy weights too early. Now that you know how to prevent and reverse osteoporosis, you still need to know how to lose weight. How I lost 60 pounds is the #1 question I get asked. It's also one of the top things you can do for your longevity. Click on my video about quick and easy weight loss for women over 50. See you in the next video, because your health is the ultimate luxury.